The red dust of Mars swirled around the entrance of the abandoned research facility as Marcus Reed checked his suit's oxygen levels one more time. The old building stood half-buried in the rusty soil, its metal walls dulled by decades of exposure to the harsh Martian environment. He had spent 3 years getting permission to explore this site, and now that he was here, his heart wouldn't stop racing. Marcus switched on his helmet lights and stepped through the airlock. The facility's backup power systems still worked after all these years, making his job a little easier. His boots left clear prints in the dust that had managed to sneak inside over the years. According to the old maps, the main research lab should be 2 levels down. The silence was broken only by his breathing and the soft hum of his suit's systems. As he made his way deeper into the facility, his mind wandered to the stories he'd heard about this place. It was one of the first research stations built on Mars, abandoned during the Great Solar Storm of 2047. The evacuation had been so quick that they'd left almost everything behind. A loud beep from his scanner pulled him back to the present. The device was picking up unusual energy readings from somewhere below. Marcus checked his map again and found a stairwell hidden behind a half-closed door. The stairs looked stable enough, but he tested each step carefully before putting his full weight on it. The second level was darker, and the backup lights flickered uncertainly. His scanner's beeping grew stronger as he approached a heavy blast door at the end of a long corridor. It took him several minutes to override the old security system, but finally, the door slid open with a grinding sound that echoed through the empty halls. What he found inside made him freeze. The lab was massive, much bigger than the building plans had shown, and in its center stood something that shouldn't exist. It looked like a cannon, but unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The device was clearly human-made, but its design seemed impossible for the time period. It predated humanity's first spaceflight, yet here it was, on Mars. Marcus was so absorbed in studying the weapon that he almost missed the sound of another airlock cycling. He turned around to find 5 figures entering the lab. Their environmental suits were sleek and advanced, marking them as members of the Collective, the galaxy's leading civilization. The aliens had arrived on Earth 10 years ago, bringing amazing technology and a condescending attitude toward humanity's primitive achievements. Dr. Reed, the tallest figure, said, removing its helmet to reveal Administrator Vex's gray-skinned face. "We're quite disappointed. This area was meant to be sealed until our archaeological team could properly examine it." Marcus stood his ground. "This is a human facility, Administrator. My permits are in order." Vex walked around the weapon, his 4 eyes blinking in different patterns, a sign of amusement among his species. "And what do you make of this artifact?" "It's some kind of weapon system," Marcus replied, watching as the other Collective members scanned the device. "But its design doesn't match anything from the facility's time period. A primitive projectile weapon, nothing more," one of the other aliens said, their voice dripping with disdain. "Barely worth studying." Marcus wanted to argue, but his scanner started beeping frantically. The energy readings from the weapon were spiking. As he watched, small lights began appearing along its surface, and a low hum filled the room. "Interesting," Vex said, though his tone suggested he was anything but impressed. "Your species does have a fascinating habit of preserving museum pieces, though I suppose when your civilization is as young as humanity, even primitive tools seem worth saving." The other Collective members laughed, but Marcus barely heard them. He was too focused on his readings. The energy signature didn't match any known weapon type, not even the advanced ones the Collective had shown them. It was something entirely different, and possibly far more powerful than the aliens realized. "We'll take it from here, Dr. Reed," Vex announced. "The Collective's facilities are much better equipped to study such artifacts, though I doubt we'll learn anything of value from such outdated technology." "With all due respect, Administrator," Marcus said carefully, "this is a human relic found in a human facility. It falls under Earth's jurisdiction." Vex's upper eyes narrowed while his lower ones widened, a clear sign of annoyance. "Dr. Reed, You seem to be under the impression that you have a choice in this matter. The Collective's Archaeological Division has ultimate authority over all significant technological discoveries in this sector. Or did you forget the terms of our partnership? Marcus knew he was right about the terms, but something felt wrong about this whole situation. The Collective had never shown this much interest in human artifacts before. Why were they so eager to claim this one? I'll need to report this to Earth Command, Marcus said, trying to buy time while he recorded as much data as he could. Of course, Vex replied smoothly. Report whatever you wish. My team will begin preparations to move the artifact immediately. As the Collective members began setting up their equipment, Marcus made his way to the lab's communication terminal. The energy readings were still climbing, and he needed to get this information to Earth before the Collective took over. He had a feeling this primitive weapon was far more important than anyone realized. What he didn't know yet was that this discovery would change everything. The weapon he'd found wasn't just an old relic. It was proof that humanity's past held secrets that even the Collective couldn't comprehend. And soon, everyone would understand just how dangerous it could be to underestimate humanity's primitive technology. As Marcus sent his data burst to Earth, he took one last look at the weapon. The humming had grown louder, and more lights were appearing across its surface. Whatever this thing was, he had a feeling they'd all find out soon enough. The only question was whether humanity would get to unlock its secrets, or if the Collective would bury this discovery like they had so many others. 2 weeks after the discovery on Mars, Marcus sat in his small lab on Earth, staring at the data readings for the 100th time. The Collective had taken the weapon, but they couldn't take the information he'd managed to gather. Something about those energy signatures kept bothering him. They didn't make any sense, almost as if the weapon was designed to work in ways that broke the laws of physics. A knock on his door made him look up. Linda Torres, his research assistant, stood in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a worried look on her face. You need to see this, she said, placing 1 cup on his desk and turning on the wall screen. The newsfeed showed a massive Collective ship hanging in orbit around Jupiter. It wasn't one of their usual diplomatic vessels or trade ships. This was something else entirely, a warship. As Marcus watched, more ships appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light travel like deadly rain. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Linda said, her voice tight with concern. This came in 10 minutes ago. The Collective is demanding an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He'd seen that look in Administrator Vex's eyes back on Mars. The look of someone who'd finally found what they'd been searching for. They were never here to help us, were they? The answer came 3 hours later. Every screen on Earth lit up with Administrator Vex's face. His 4 eyes weren't showing any signs of amusement now. People of Earth, he began, his voice cold and clear. For 10 years, we have watched your civilization develop. We have guided you, studied you, and evaluated you. Today, we have reached our conclusion. The camera pulled back to show the weapon they'd found on Mars, now mounted on some kind of testing platform. Your kind has a disturbing tendency to create weapons of incredible destructive power. We found this one before you could restore it, but we know there are others. The Collective cannot allow potentially dangerous species to threaten the peace we have maintained for 10,000 years. Marcus grabbed his phone and called Linda. She answered before the first ring finished. I'm already on my way to the lab, she said. Meet me there. On screen, Vex continued. You have 2 Earth days to surrender all military assets and submit to full Collective control. Any resistance will be met with immediate planetary punishment. To demonstrate our resolve, the camera view shifted to show one of Jupiter's smaller moons. There was a flash of light from the Collective fleet, and the moon simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris field. It was just gone, taking 3 research bases and 500 human colonists with it. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us, Vex said. Your technology is nothing compared to ours. Submit, or face extinction. The broadcast cut off, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Marcus ran to his lab, his mind racing. The weapon they'd found. Those impossible energy readings. What if they weren't impossible at all? What if they were just beyond anything modern science could explain? Linda was already at work when he arrived, her fingers flying over 3 different keyboards. The energy signature, she said without looking up. It wasn't a normal weapon pattern because it wasn't just a weapon. Look at this. She pulled up 2 displays, one showing the readings from Mars, the other showing long-range scans of the destroyed moon. The patterns matched. They didn't want the weapon because it was dangerous, Marcus said, finally understanding. They wanted it because they recognized what it could do. They've seen it before. Linda nodded. The weapon isn't primitive at all. It's way beyond anything we have now. Someone in Earth's past built a planet killer, then hid it away. The question is, who and why? They worked through the night, digging through the data Marcus had collected. More collective ships arrived every hour, taking up positions around Earth's solar system. They were boxing humanity in, preparing for either surrender or slaughter. But with each passing hour, Marcus and Linda uncovered more about the weapon's true nature. It didn't fire normal projectiles or energy beams. Instead, it somehow targeted the fundamental frequency of matter itself, causing it to simply cease existing. The amount of power needed to make it work was enormous, far beyond anything humanity had when it was built. Look at these markings, Linda said, zooming in on one of the images from Mars. They're not random damage. They're words, just really worn down. And they're in English. Marcus leaned in close, squinting at the screen. As Linda enhanced the image, his eyes widened. Warning, he read slowly. Use only as last resort. The cost of power is high, but the cost of failure is extinction. That's not all, Linda said, her voice shaking slightly. I found a reference to this kind of technology in some old folklore, stories about a civilization that existed on Earth long before recorded history. They were supposed to have built amazing things, then vanished overnight. Most historians dismiss it as myth, but a loud alarm cut through the air. On their screens, they could see the collective fleet moving into attack formation. They weren't going to wait 2 days. The attack was starting now. Marcus grabbed his phone and called Earth Command. Get me the Defense Council, he said. Now, tell them we found something about the weapon from Mars. Tell them we might have a way to fight back. As he waited to be connected, he looked at the image of the collective fleet. Their ships were beautiful, powerful, and utterly advanced. They thought they had humanity trapped and helpless. But they had made one huge mistake. They had assumed that just because something was old, it had to be primitive. They had forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous weapons are the ones that time forgot. Now humanity just had to hope they could figure out how to use it before the collective decided to demonstrate their power again. This time on Earth itself. Last edited 3 days ago. The underground bunker of Earth Command buzzed with activity as Marcus and Linda presented their findings. The room was filled with military leaders and scientists, all watching the holographic display of the ancient weapon schematics. Outside, the sky had turned an eerie purple as the collective's ships entered the upper atmosphere, their energy fields distorting the light of the sun. The weapon doesn't just destroy things, Linda explained, pointing to the complex energy patterns on the screen. It erases them completely. It targets the specific frequency that holds matter together in our universe. Like tuning a radio to exactly the right station, but instead of music, you get nothing. One of the generals leaned forward, his face lined with worry. And you're certain this weapon was made on Earth? By humans? Marcus nodded, pulling up the images of the worn text they'd found. By humans, yes, but not from any civilization we know of. The technology is far beyond anything we should have been capable of back then. These energy readings suggest whoever built it had mastered power sources we're only theorizing about now. What kind of power are we talking about? Another scientist asked. Linda took a deep breath. Based on our calculations, to fire it once would take the same amount of energy as 100 modern fusion reactors running at full power. The builders left notes warning that using it required an enormous power cost. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Above them, the collected ships had finished forming their attack pattern. Their deadline for surrender was still 12 hours away, but no one believed they would wait that long. Marcus walked to the main display and brought up a new set of readings. We've been testing the principles behind the weapon on a small scale. Watch this. He played a video showing a tiny version of the device, powered by a portable fusion cell. When activated, it fired at a block of steel. The metal didn't melt or explode. It simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind, not even dust. That was with just a fraction of the power it was designed to use. Linda added, "Imagine that effect scaled up to planetary size." One of the military advisors spoke up. "The collective ships have shields, advanced energy barriers. How do we know this would even work against them?" "Because they're scared of it," Marcus said simply. "Think about it. They came to Earth claiming to be peaceful, but they spent 10 years searching for something. When they found this weapon, they immediately dropped their friendly act. They recognized what it could do, and their first move was to take it away from us." A warning siren cut through the air. On the main screens, they could see the collective ships moving into attack position over major cities. They weren't going to wait for their own deadline. "They're starting with Mars," someone shouted. Multiple energy signatures detected. The room watched in horror as beams of light struck the red planet. Massive explosions bloomed across its surface as human colonies were wiped out one by one. The message was clear: surrender or be next. How long would it take to power up the weapon? The head of Earth Command asked, his voice steady despite the terror unfolding on the screens. Linda checked her calculations. "If we redirect power from every major fusion plant on Earth, maybe 6 hours. But we have to shut down almost everything else. Cities, defense systems, everything. And we'd only get one shot," Marcus added. "The power draw would burn out most of our infrastructure." The general nodded grimly. "One shot is all we need, if it works. Begin the power diversion. And someone get me a line to Administrator Vex. Let's see if we can buy some time." As the room burst into action, Marcus and Linda rushed to their equipment. They had studied the weapon's control systems extensively, but actually firing it would be another matter entirely. One wrong calculation, one misaligned frequency, and their one shot would be wasted. Time seemed to blur as they worked. Reports kept coming in of more attacks on Mars, each one destroying another piece of humanity's first colony world. The collective was being methodical, making Earth watch as they erased years of human achievement. 5 hours into their preparation, all the screens lit up with Administrator Vex's face. His 4 eyes showed no emotion as he spoke. "Your time grows short, humans. Mars burns as an example. Earth will be next. Submit now, and we may show mercy." The head of Earth Command stood straight as he replied. "We notice you haven't used the weapon you took from us. Could it be you're afraid to touch it? Afraid it might do to you what it did to its last targets?" For the first time, they saw uncertainty flicker across Vex's alien features. "Your primitive relic is useless. We merely kept it to prevent you from harming yourselves with it. Then you won't mind if we tell you we found another one," Linda said suddenly, stepping into view, "and we figured out how to power it." The change in Vex's expression was subtle but unmistakable. Fear. Pure, unmistakable fear. The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're moving their ships back," someone reported, "pulling out of the atmosphere. New formation. They're clustering together. Defensive pattern." Marcus looked at the power readings. They were at 80% of what they needed. The weapon's control systems were humming with energy, ancient machinery coming fully alive for the first time in thousands of years. "They're afraid," he said softly. "They know exactly what this weapon can do. The only question is, do we know enough to make it work?" Linda squeezed his shoulder. "I guess we'll find out. One way or another, Earth's future depends on us understanding our past. Let's hope our ancestors left us enough clues to finish what they started. Above them, the collective fleet continued to gather, preparing for what they thought would be their moment of triumph. They had no way of knowing that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the relic they'd stolen. It was humanity's habit of studying, preserving, and learning from the past. The ancient weapons control room had been rebuilt deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Marcus and Linda worked frantically as a countdown timer on the wall showed they had less than 1 hour before the collective resumed their attack. Power from across the globe was being channeled into the facility, causing the lights to flicker and the temperature to rise as systems strained under the immense energy flow. Final calibration sequence, Linda said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked. We're reaching power levels that shouldn't be possible with our current technology. Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the readouts. The ancients designed it to draw power from multiple sources at once. It's like the weapon itself is amplifying what we're feeding it. He looked up at the main screen showing the collective fleet. Their ships had formed a tight defensive cluster, as if they knew what was coming. The room was crowded with military personnel and the world's top scientists, all watching in tense silence. Earth's remaining defensive ships had positioned themselves in a protective formation around the planet, though everyone knew they wouldn't last long against the collective's superior weapons. A general stepped forward, his face grim. We just lost contact with the lunar base. The collective is taking out our off-world communications one by one. They're isolating us, Linda said without looking up from her work, cutting us off before the final strike. Marcus checked the power levels one more time. They were at 94% and climbing slowly. We need more time, he said. The weapon will fire at 100%, but optimal targeting requires a full power cycle first. Otherwise, we might miss. The head of Earth Command rubbed his tired eyes. We don't have more time. Look. On the screen, several collective ships were breaking away from the main fleet, moving into attack positions. Their weapon systems were powering up, glowing with the same energy that had destroyed Mars. We need a distraction, the general said. Something to buy us those extra minutes. As if in answer, a young officer burst into the room. Sir, the Pacific Defense Fleet is moving into engagement range. Admiral Greaves says they'll draw the collective's attention. Everyone watched as Earth's ships, looking tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, accelerated toward the enemy. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. Tell Greaves, the general started, then paused. Tell him the whole planet is watching. Make it count. On the main screen, Earth's ships opened fire on the collective fleet. Their weapons seemed pathetically weak, barely scratching the advanced shields. But it worked. The collective ships that had been preparing to attack Earth turned to deal with this unexpected threat. They're buying us time, Linda whispered. We can't waste it. Marcus nodded, focusing back on the weapon controls. The ancient systems responded to their adjustments, the power level climbing to 97%, then 98%. Marcus studied the targeting system, trying to understand the complex calculations involved. The weapon didn't target a physical location. It targeted the unique frequency of matter itself. I think I see it now, he said suddenly. The targeting system isn't just spatial coordinates. It's looking for a specific pattern in the fabric of reality, like tuning a radio to exactly the right station. Linda looked up. The collective ships all use the same shield frequency. If we target that specific pattern, we could take out their entire fleet with one shot, Marcus finished. His hands flew over the controls, inputting the new parameters. On the screen, Earth's ships were being destroyed one by one. Admiral Greaves' flagship was the last to fall, ramming itself into a collective vessel in a final act of defiance. The sacrifice had worked, though. The power level had reached 99%. Target locked, Linda announced. The weapon is identifying the collective's main command ship based on its energy signature. The room fell silent as the final preparations were made. The ancient weapon hummed with power, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate with the earth itself. Outside the facility, the sky had darkened as power stations across the planet directed all their output to this single purpose. 100%, Marcus said quietly. We're ready. The head of Earth Command stepped forward. Do it. Marcus took a deep breath and pressed his hand against the activation panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the facility lights dimmed completely as the weapon drew its final power surge. A low, singing tone filled the air, building in intensity until everyone had to cover their ears. On the screen, a beam of pure white light shot up from somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. It looked almost delicate, like a thread of silk stretching into space. The collective ships didn't react at first, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Energy signature climbing beyond measurable levels. Someone reported, their voice filled with awe. The beam is somehow gaining power as it travels. The white light reached the collective's command ship and seemed to stop. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the light changed, spreading across the surface of the ship like water. Where it touched, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving perfect voids in the shape of the vessel. It's working, Linda whispered. The effect spread from ship to ship, following the connections of their shared shield frequency. Within moments, half the collective fleet had vanished, not destroyed but simply erased from existence. The remaining ships tried to flee, breaking formation and scattering in all directions. The beam followed, splitting into dozens of smaller threads, each seeking out its target with perfect precision. In less than a minute, the entire collective attack force had vanished. The room erupted in cheers, but Marcus kept his eyes on the readings. Something's happening, he said, raising his voice to be heard. The weapon is still active. The beam, now barely visible from Earth, had changed course. It was stretching further into space, towards something beyond their solar system. It's targeting their homeworld. Linda realized, her face pale. The weapon isn't just hitting their ships. It's following the frequency back to its source. The room fell silent again as they watched the beam stretch beyond their tracking capabilities. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then their deep space sensors detected a massive energy surge from the direction of the collective's home system. My God, someone whispered. Did we just? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the facility lit up with Administrator Vex's face. For once, all 4 of his eyes showed the same emotion. Terror. What have you done? He demanded, his voice shaking. That weapon was never meant to be used. It was sealed away for a reason. Marcus stepped forward. You threatened our planet. You destroyed our colonies. What did you expect us to do? You don't understand, Vex said, actual fear breaking through his usually composed demeanor. That weapon doesn't just destroy. It erases. Completely. Our main world is gone, along with 3 billion lives. Just gone. The implications of what they'd done settled heavily on everyone in the room. They had just wiped out an entire planet with a single shot. 3 days after the weapon fired, Marcus stood at the observation window of the International Space Station, watching the remains of the collective fleet retreat from Earth's solar system. The once mighty armada was reduced to a handful of ships, their engines pushed to maximum as they fled from the planet they had so recently threatened to destroy. Earth had won, but the victory felt hollow. The weapon had done far more than they had intended, reaching across space to erase the collective's homeworld from existence. 3 billion lives gone in an instant. Marcus couldn't help but wonder if they had become the very monster they had fought against. You couldn't have known, Linda said, floating up beside him. She had dark circles under her eyes from 3 days without proper sleep. The weapon was designed to follow energy signatures to their source. No one could have predicted it would reach that far. Marcus sighed, his breath fogging the reinforced glass. We should have tried harder to understand it before we used it. The ancient builders must have sealed it away for a reason. The space station shuddered slightly as a shuttle docked. It would be carrying the representatives from Earth Command, and what remained of the collective leadership. Both sides had agreed to meet on neutral ground, away from the weapon that had changed everything. "It's time," Linda said quietly. The conference room was tense as humans and aliens sat across from each other. Administrator Vex looked diminished somehow, his usually perfect posture now slumped with the weight of loss. 3 other collective leaders accompanied him, their four-eyed gazes filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. The head of Earth Command spoke first. "We regret the extent of the damage caused by the ancient weapon. It was never our intention to target civilian populations." Vex's laugh was bitter. "Yet you were willing to use a weapon you didn't understand, against an enemy you knew nothing about." His upper eyes narrowed. "Did you ever wonder why that weapon was on Mars? Why it was sealed away and not on display as a testament to human achievement?" Marcus leaned forward. "We assumed it was hidden to keep it from falling into the wrong hands." "It was hidden because it should never have been built," Vex snapped. "Some technologies are too dangerous to exist, even as a deterrent." One of the other collective leaders spoke, her voice softer than Vex. "What you discovered wasn't a human weapon at all. It was built to fight us, yes, but not by your kind." A confused murmur ran through the human side of the table. The female alien continued. "Long before your recorded history, another species lived on Earth. They were peaceful, advanced, curious, much like you. We called them the predecessors." Vex picked up the story, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "The collective wasn't always what it is today. 10,000 years ago, we were conquerors, moving from system to system, taking what we wanted. Earth was just another target." Linda's eyes widened. "The ancient civilization in our myths, the ones who supposedly vanished overnight. They didn't vanish," the female alien said. "They fought back. They built weapons like the one you found, designed to target our specific energy signatures. But in the final battle, when they activated their defense system, it worked too well." Marcus finished, understanding dawning on his face. "It didn't just target your ships. It followed the energy pattern all the way back to your homeworld." Vex nodded slowly. "Just as you did to us. History repeats itself, it seems." The predecessors were horrified by what they'd done. They had only meant to defend themselves, not commit genocide. In their shame, they sealed away their weapons, scattered them across your solar system. And then, he paused. "Then what?" the Earth Command leader asked. "They left," Vex said simply. "Abandoned this world and their technology. They couldn't bear to live with what they had done." The collective survivors swore never to conquer again, to become protectors instead of destroyers. "For 10,000 years, we've kept that promise." "Until you came to Earth," Marcus said. "Why? If you had changed your ways, why come here at all?" The female alien answered. "Our scientists detected the weapon's energy signature becoming active again. We feared the predecessors had returned, or worse, the humans had found their technology without understanding the dangers. We came to find and contain the weapons before they could be used again." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The collective hadn't come as conquerors, but as guardians, trying to prevent history from repeating itself. Yet their secrecy and condescension had created the very conflict they sought to avoid. "You should have told us the truth from the beginning," Linda said. "Instead, you treated us like children, hiding the real reason you were here." "Would you have believed us?" Vex asked. "Or would you have seen our warnings as an attempt to keep powerful weapons out of human hands? We observe your history. You don't exactly have a record of putting aside weapons once you found them." No one on the human side could argue with that point. The head of Earth Command cleared his throat. "So where do we go from here? Your fleet is decimated. Our planet is intact, but our power grid is in shambles. Neither of us is in a position to continue fighting." Vex looked at his fellow collective members, then back at the humans. "We propose a true alliance this time. No more secrets, no more condescension. We help you rebuild, and you help us find any remaining predecessor weapons before they can cause more harm. And then what? Marcus asked. Do we destroy them? No, Vex said, surprising everyone. We study them together, carefully, in controlled environments. The predecessors were more advanced than either of our civilizations. Their technology could benefit the galaxy if properly understood and safely adapted. Discussions continued for hours, hammering out the details of this new relationship. By the time they finished, the first tentative steps toward genuine cooperation had been taken. As Marcus and Linda prepared to return to Earth, they stood one last time at the observation window. The blue-green planet below them looked peaceful from this distance, showing no signs of the near extinction they had faced. Do you think it will work? Linda asked. This alliance. Marcus considered the question carefully. I think we both learned some hard lessons. The collective learned not to underestimate primitive species, and we learned that just because we can use a technology doesn't mean we should. Linda nodded. The predecessors must have felt the same way. Powerful enough to wipe out their enemies, but wise enough to walk away from that power afterward. Maybe that's the real test of an advanced civilization, Marcus said. Not what you can build, but what you choose not to use. As their shuttle detached from the station and began its descent, both humans watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the predecessors might still exist, watching to see what their inheritors would do with the world they'd left behind. Marcus hoped they would be proud of the choice humanity had made today, to learn from the past rather than repeat it. The ancient weapon remained sealed in its bunker, its power source disconnected. It would be studied carefully, jointly by human and collective scientists, with safeguards to prevent it from ever being fired again. A reminder that some relics deserve respect, not because they're powerful, but because of the terrible lessons they teach. Earth would never again underestimate the dangers of the past, nor would the collective dismiss the potential of younger races. Together, they would face whatever challenges the universe held next, wiser, humbler, and united by the understanding that came from nearly destroying each other.